Redshift here, doing my part to shift perceptions out of the pink and into the red. People need to stop buying GLD and SLV and things like that. It's not like buying precious metals or even, buying at technical indicators or buying the cheapest precious metal, right? Like buying the cheapest precious metal still depletes the amount of real metal, right? Like if you're just buying if you have like, okay, I'm going to spend like $1,000 every month on precious metals. And you're like, but I'm gonna just buy whichever precious metal is cheapest at that particular time, at that particular month. Like some months you buy silver, some buy gold, some you buy platinum, some you buy palladium, because you just buy whatever's cheapest, right? Like at least cheapest relative to like how much is produced and like what you think the real value of it should be, right? So like that sort of helps the price suppression if you do that, because you're not devotedly buying one thing. So it's like, if they could just lower the price of some other one, if they're, if they're running out of silver, for example, right? Like too many people are buying silver, then they could just, artificially lower the price of gold and therefore get everybody to buy gold. And then they can replenish their silver supplies or whatever to make it so that, there's not a massive shortage again when everybody starts buying silver again. You see, so like if you're just moved by price like that, you're sort of letting the elites manipulate you. You know what I mean? Like you're getting more precious metal, but like you're sort of in a sense assisting the price suppression scheme. You know what I mean? But at the same time, you're still depleting, like the real and a certain amount of real metal, which was, previously in the ground, and now there's going to be less in the ground, and then decade after decade, there's going to be less and less of every metal in the ground. Maybe they're mining the same amount, but only because they're putting more and more effort into it, more and more money into mining. You know what I mean? Eventually we'll reach peak gold or peak silver. And, Blank P may have pointed out in a video using the data that there's no evidence of peak gold or peak silver, but obviously we will eventually reach a point of peak silver or peak gold, even if that's 200 years from now, because there's only so much gold in the ground and only so much silver in the ground and all the rest, whatever metals you're talking about. And so, you can't mine more and more every year forever. This planet is only so big. You know what I mean? So that's the way it is, right? So you're still depleting, a certain amount of real metal and therefore making it more rare. So, over the long term, I guess you're still waging war against the government, even if you're buying the cheapest precious metal, right? So in a sense, or buying at technical indicators, you're going along with the idea that, oh yeah, that's the real price, rather than the fact that no, it's not the real price. If it were not suppressed, and if everybody were buying it on principle rather than just buying whatever was cheapest or waiting for the technical indicator of, retracement level or whatever, it's going to be, lower later on. This is a super spike, so we're going to wait for a 50% retracement before buying more. Yeah, that's smart on an individual level, and you'll be able to buy more. And so, yeah, in a sense, being able to buy more even makes it so that you can hurt the system more. But still, you're sort of like assisting with the idea that like this price is the real price, and that therefore these technical indicators are rational and we should respond to them. But if everybody bought on principle and just bought it just because it's real money and fuck the technical indicators, we're going to buy it to harm the government and harm JP Morgan because they're tyrannical, well, then we would be able to break the price suppression much easier if everybody bought on principle rather than just to buy quote-unquote intelligently. You know what I mean? Also even buying intelligently is a de facto, admission that government cannot be defeated, right? Which is not true. But like buying GLD and SLV are even way worse than just buying technical indicator points or, buying whichever precious metal is cheapest. I mean, in a sense, you could say that's kind of going along with the bad guys, but in a sense, kind of not, especially technical indicators, because you're saving more money. Or the other way, I guess, too, buying the cheapest precious metal. You're saving more money so that you can, over the long term, buy more precious metals, which harms the government more. I guess it's a matter of whether you believe it's moral to allow the government to kick the can more times, because, if you do allow the government to kick more cans more times, one philosophical view would say, well, you can only kick the can so many times. So buying what's cheapest or buying at technical indicators, that's the smart thing to do, and you're not hurting anybody. And you're not hurting the cause of freedom. But if you want to view it a little differently, you can be like, well, technological advancements make it so that there's more standard of living increases that can be siphoned off so that the people don't revolt because they still have food and shelter, but yet more and more, the government has more and more and more money to spend, more and more advanced technology to use to enslave the people, etc. So therefore, theoretically, perhaps the government can kick the can forever. And if you view it that way, if the government can kick the can forever, then yeah, buying at technical indicators or buying the cheapest precious metal or whatever is going along with the bad guys. But even if it is, it's still not anywhere near as buying GLD or SLV. Buying shares of GLD or SLV, it's more like a stock, like Jim Rickard said. It's backed up by a little bit of physical gold, but they sell probably 100 to, some people have even said probably 500 like shares or whatever for every 1 ounce. You know what I mean? Like for every 1 ounce of gold, paper gold that you own, there's probably, I mean, for every 1 ounce of real gold, physical gold that is owned by the trust, GLD or SLV, or whatever other trusts there are. There's like a GLDM or something as well, and then there's a bunch of other products that are similar to GLD and SLV and GLDM or whatever. Like there's all these, like for just GLD, right? Like for every 1 ounce of physical owned by the trust GLD, there's like 100, maybe even as many as 500, but at the very least like 10, probably at least 10, but maybe even as many as 500 shares per 1 ounce shares. You know, like a stock, a share or whatever is like represents more than 1 ounce or whatever, I think. But so you can't say like translates directly, but let's say for like a contract for GLD is like 1,000 ounces. I can't remember what it is. I think with SLV it's like 5,000 ounces in one contract. I can't remember what GLD is. GLD is 500, 1,000, whatever. But let's just say it's like 1,000 ounces in one contract. Well, for every 1,000 ounces of physical they have, there's like probably 100 or maybe even more paper contracts that are each for 1,000 ounces. So there's like 100 times more people thinking that they own gold than actually do. You know what I mean? So you're harming the whole cause of freedom and the price of gold and silver and the ability of the country to go back on sound money way more. You're harming the cause of freedom way more by buying GLD and SLV than if you just buy physical precious metals at your local coin shop or online, but you buy technical indicators or you buy whichever precious metal is cheapest at that time or whatever. Technical indicators being like indicators of when to buy the same metal. So, buying a technical indicators is like, when do I buy silver? Because I'm a silver bug and I only buy silver, for example, right? So then you're like, oh, well, it's really high according to technical indicators, the price, so it should be going down soon. So I'll just save my money for another month or 2 or 3 or whatever, and then I'll buy when it goes back down, like it probably should according to the technical indications, right? Versus like buying whichever metal is cheapest, but buying every month. So those are two different strategies. But, buying GLD and SLV are way worse, right? But let's see here. This is sort of explaining what I was meaning to say here, but let me get back to the script here. Buying the cheapest precious metal still depletes the amount of real metal, and thus there's still a certain amount of warfare against the government. And thus it is still a certain amount of warfare against the government, although it's probably more effective if everyone just bought one precious metal, especially if a lot of people were buying the same precious metal and were buying only that particular precious metal, such as silver. Then you could start to harm the government's ability to source silver and could force the price to rise and thus get the sheeple to start buying, thus leading to an ever greater shortage and an even greater rise in price. But buying GLD or SLV is like buying Ripple, the cryptocurrency that's like a bank cryptocurrency. It's empowering the bad guys so that they can more effectively enslave everyone. Buying GLD or SLV, even if only temporarily, in order to make a short-term trade, in order to make money, is still probably an immoral act. I mean, definitely if you like hold a lot of wealth in GLD or SLV, that is definitely an immoral act. But I guess maybe trading it short term to make profits and then using those profits to buy physical silver or gold, I guess that is perhaps not immoral. But you definitely should not hold large amounts of GLD or SLV. Probably the only moral way to deal with GLD or SLV is to buy and sell shares of it, like quickly or whatever, according to technical indications or whatever, in order to make profits, which you then, use to buy physical gold or silver. That's at like a coin shop or SD Bullion or Provident Metals or wherever, right? By the way, I saw a video recently by Blind P. He said that, I'm going to use AppMex in this example, he said, because they're like, really renowned and their prices are fair. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Out of like all the gold and silver sellers, the major ones that I know online, like SD Bullion, JM Bullion, ProvidentMetals.com, AppMex.com, and Scottsdale Mint, and maybe one or two others. Out of all of those, AppMex is definitely the most expensive. So I don't know what Blank P is talking about, acting like AppMex is fairly priced. JM Bullion and SD Bullion, not JM Bullion, SD Bullion and ProvidentMetals.com are both way cheaper than AppMex. So very weird that he would like act like AppMex is decently priced. I guess that just show. But yeah, even though he makes really really good money because he's got a PhD in chemical engineering or something like that, Blank P does. Like even though that's the case, like you'd think that he'd still be able to tell that like the prices on AppMex are not that good. I mean, maybe a slightly higher premium may not be much to him, but he should still be able to see that no, they are the highest priced of all the precious metal sellers that I've found, or at least one of the highest priced. But let's see here. The script says, people harm themselves by being greedy and wanting to make money and not have to bother with the price and inconvenience of physical precious metals. They harm themselves because they enable and empower the fiat currency system, which enslaves us all. That is, instead of having to pay the premium and having to store the physical at your house or whatever, they're like, oh, it's just so much more convenient to own GLD or SLV. Yeah, by that convenience, you're selling your soul and you're enslaving the whole country. By empowering the system, which enables them to drive down the COMEX price of gold and silver, and therefore allow people to not wake up to the fact that gold and silver are money. You know what I mean? Like, by wanting the convenience of GLD and SLV, you are enslaving everybody. You are participating in the enslavement of everybody. It's just that simple. People need to be more principled. As smart as McAfee, I mean, the guy who started McAfee antivirus or whatever, as smart as he is, I don't particularly like the guy. But even though I don't particularly like him, he was an asshole on Danielle Cambone's show on the. She hosts, Kitco News's, segments or whatever, right? And, she had him on not that long ago, maybe a month ago or whatever, a couple weeks ago, whenever it was. And he was kind of an asshole, man. And he's also, we know, like, he was being a sexual degenerate down there in South America or wherever it was when he was living outside of the U.S. before he fled back to the U.S., right? Like, he's an asshole, and Max Kaiser accused him of pumping cryptos. He had like a crypto of the day type of thing. He probably bought before, then he pumped it, advocated it as the crypto of the day, and then sold when everybody bought it on his recommendation, you know what I mean? Like, so he's like a scumbag probably, basically, McAfee is, right? But he does have the right idea. He said that if someone wants to hire him to do something, then they have to pay him in Monero. And if they can't pay him in Monero, they can't hire him, because he only takes payment in Monero. This is the right idea. I mean, not necessarily Monero, but like choosing a sound money and saying, hey, you want to hire me for my services? You got to pay me in this, whether it's silver or rhodium or vanadium or Bitcoin Dark or, Zcash or Komodo or Monero. It doesn't matter. Whatever sound money it is, you choose your sound money and you say, you got to pay me in this sound money. And if you can't pay me in this sound money, you can't hire me. Right? Like, that is a good thing that all people should be doing. You can do your own petrodollar type of thing in a commune by creating your own cryptocurrency, and then that is like the commune creates its own cryptocurrency, and then when everyone in the probably not everybody working on it, but like it's the commune's cryptocurrency, and the 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 smartest people in the commune with like 160 or 180 IQs and really good memories, they create this cryptocurrency. And then, and then in the future, when everyone in the commune has a really high IQ due to doing eugenic breeding for a few generations and has a really good memory, and the coders in the commune are all among the best coders in the world, and the lawyers in the commune are among the best lawyers in the world, and the financial advisors in the commune are among the best financial advisors in the world, etc., then people outside the commune will want to hire the commune members. And if the commune members then tell those people that they have to pay them in like, you're like let's say one of the commune's lawyers, and you're not just a lawyer for the commune, you're a lawyer who lives in the commune, you can be hired to do other things by outsiders, right? So then the outsiders who want to hire you as a lawyer, you can be like, hey, you got to pay me in my commune's cryptocurrency if you want to hire me. So, then they have to spend dollars to bid up those cryptocurrency units, those coins, And then that creates a demand for the commune's cryptocurrency. The artificial demand for dollars, the petrodollar works by like creating an artificial demand for dollars because people need to buy dollars in order to buy oil, because a ton of oil producing countries are, on the petrodollar. They only accept dollars for oil. You see, so this gives the dollar strangely high purchasing power despite the US's insanely high spending, which should be creating massive inflation, but it doesn't because everybody needs dollars to buy oil. You see, so this allows the US to shunt its inflation off onto the rest of the world. I think a commune could probably do something similar by demanding payment in the commune's own cryptocurrency. And if lots of powerful people wanted to hire the commune's people to do various things, because the people in the commune being the best in the world at what they do, because of them having really high IQs and really good memories, because of doing eugenics for a few generations, then, if there were no coins of that commune's cryptocurrency available at that time, then the people would have to bid them up. They'd have to, incentivize people to part with them by offering them more dollars for those cryptocurrency units, and thus drive up the price of that commune's cryptocurrency. Or the people outside, the outsiders who wanted to hire the commune's people to do stuff for them, whether it be a lawyer or an architect or whatever it is, would have to also, the other thing they could do is they could buy mining computers and then mine that cryptocurrency in order to obtain new coins of that cryptocurrency, bring new coins into existence through mining, right, with which to pay the commune members for their services, thus making the commune's cryptocurrency more rare, because the more coins you mine, the more coins that get mined, the more hard it becomes to mine future coins after that point, right? So even if they can't bid up and obtain old coins, they can mine new coins, the outsiders could, in order to have coins to pay the people in the commune to do whatever it is they want them to do, be a lawyer or architect or whatever. And so then that means so that all the future coins will be harder to mine. So then all the future outsiders who want to mine coins to pay people in the commune to do stuff, they'll have to do more mining to get even fewer coins, you know what I mean? Or more mining to get the same amount of coins, you know what I mean? And so that means that it'll be a situation of it'll be harder and harder and harder to obtain coins, and so the coins will all be worth more and more and more and more. But as the coins in the commune, commune's cryptocurrency's coins are worth more, that means the commune members who have a lot of them are going to want to spend them now, because now instead of worth $100 a coin, they're worth $1,000 a coin. So they're like, hey, I'm going to cash in a little bit. I'm going to buy another house, or we're going to buy some more land for the commune using some of these coins. So then more coins get released back into the outside world with which to buy things, so that more people can hire the commune's people to do stuff with for them. And the mining being harder means that all the coins are going to be worth more also because of that reason, because that makes it more scarce. The coin's more scarce, and so the price of the coins being higher means that you will need fewer coins of that commune's cryptocurrency to hire the commune members to do things for the outsiders that want to hire the commune members. You see, so you could actually sort of create your own petrodollar type of system that's actually more fair than the petrodollar and doesn't necessitate war. The commune's cryptocurrency would kind of be like the petrodollar, but without any of the downsides of the petrodollar, right? The commune could create its own cryptocurrency and then require payment in that cryptocurrency to do any work for outsiders. And of course, if everybody in the commune has a really high IQ and a really good memory and is really, really good at what they do, not even everyone, even just 20 or 30% of the commune's men were like that, then there would be a lot of outsiders wanting to hire the commune's men, and then the commune's cryptocurrency would become more and more and more valuable over time. This would be, very much a good thing, and allow the commune to get richer and richer, especially if the commune has done what Satoshi did and sets aside a whole block of coins right in the very beginning, before the coin is even launched, for themselves, right? Like how Satoshi did, right? So he's got a ton of Bitcoins, and now that Bitcoin is way more popular, he's like the equivalent of like a billionaire in gold, like billionaires, like these really rich people like the Rothschilds or whoever, they may hand a ton of gold, literally tons of gold perhaps, down to their descendants. And so every generation is rich because they just inherit a huge amount of gold from their parents or grandparents. And then those people just hold the gold and sell off just a little bit at a time. But of course, gold is always becoming rarer and rarer because of less and less being left in the ground. So, gold and the population increasing, I think more than gold increases, a little bit more than gold increases every year. And so gold just becomes slightly more and more and more rare, and thus more and more valuable. And in a sense, it slightly becomes more and more valuable every year. overall, on average over decades. And so the people, maybe they have half as much gold as their grandfather passed down to them, but that gold is worth the same amount in purchasing power. And then they pass down that amount to gold to their grandkids, and then their grandkids spend a bunch of it slowly, and then by the time they pass it down, there's now there's only a quarter as much as your grandfather of a few generations ago had, but it's still worth the same amount in purchasing power, right? Like you can. Satoshi was like the equivalent of that. By giving himself a bunch of bitcoins right in the very beginning, before he even launched Bitcoin, he made himself the equivalent of a billionaire if, Bitcoin ever took off, which it has. So now he has this huge amount of coins. And yeah, if you were to release a ton of those bitcoins into the market, it would drive down the price. But if he just holds it, the price of Bitcoin stays high, and then he can very slowly sell off little bits of Bitcoin, little amounts of Bitcoin, a few Bitcoins here or there every year. Even if he just sells, 5 or 10 Bitcoins a year, that's a lot of money, you know what I mean? Compared to an average middle class salary like that, even if he had a regular job, that would be a huge supplement to his income. But yet at the same time, he still has a huge amount of Bitcoins left, and the Bitcoins are going up in value all the time, and he's not diluting the value of the Bitcoins much by selling off a little at a time. Just like the huge gold holders can sell off a little bit each time every year, and it doesn't drive down the price of gold. And gold is appreciating every year, so they stay the same amount of rich. Amount of wealthy, they stay the same amount of richness. They stay just as wealthy, even though they're still selling off gold or Bitcoin every year. You say, so this is how it is. Or to make it easier, if the commune's members, due to a few generations worth of eugenic breeding, were really good at doing everything they did, like I talked about earlier, the commune's lawyers are among the world's best, their coders are among the world's best, etc. Then instead of creating a cryptocurrency, the commune could increase the demand for silver by demanding to be paid in silver if they're going to work for anyone. Then people outside the commune would have to buy silver in order to pay the commune member for his work. And since the commune will grow its own food and buy things very cheaply, like buying used clothes, using cloth diapers, and all of that, then the commune would have little need for dollars. Maybe each commune member would demand to be paid. Maybe they would still have a little bit of a need for dollars, so maybe they demand, 10% payment in dollars and 90% payment in silver, or 25% payment in dollars and 75% payment in silver. And the dollars would be demanded in the form of physical cash, not a transfer to a bank, because you can't trust banks. You're literally an unsecured creditor in a bank, meaning it's not your money anymore. They can literally steal that money and reuse it to recapitalize the bank. Bail-ins have been the law in the United States since, I think, 1934, said Jim Rickards in his book. So yeah, the FDIC will still guarantee you won't be able to be bailed out if you have less than $250,000, but that's not much money. And even if they bail you out, the FDIC is like hooked into the stock market, so their wealth will go way down. And even if it doesn't, they just print up the money. Well, then the dollar, yeah, your $250,000 in a bank is secure, but they can only insure the dollars. They can't insure the purchasing power of those dollars. So by printing up a bunch of money to insure everybody from the losses, what they're doing is they're devaluing those very savings to save those savings. You see, so it's like you're taking a huge bail-in, haircut anyway. So but anyway, like I was saying, like you could, demand payment in $25, 25% in physical cash dollars, and 75% in silver. The members of the commune could do that. Demand payment from outsiders for their services in that form, right? Then the commune would still be able to buy stuff, but would be forcing outsiders to buy silver to give to the commune members in order to pay the commune members for their labor. This would probably increase the demand for silver, especially as the commune gets bigger and bigger. And IQs in the commune keep getting higher and higher with each generation, thus meaning that they can make more and more money and can thus suck more and more silver out of the outside world. Although, would this really be any different than the commune just getting paid in cash and then just the commune members using that cash to buy silver themselves? Like, what's the difference, right? Well, I think it actually would be better than that. And I could be wrong here, but it seems to me that when you have outsiders competing over the ability to hire one of the commune members for a project, then you have outsiders competing over who gets to buy the limited amount of silver that is available in the coin shops and stuff in order to be able to pay the commune members for their work. Because only the guy who gets the silver is able to hire the commune member. And thus this would likely create a sort of bidding war between all the people who want to hire the commune members for projects, and that would probably drive the price of silver up at least a little bit, right? Depending on how big the commune is and how big the demand is for the commune's, members for what they do. Whether they're a lawyer or an architect or an engineer or whatever, right? And I think that would drive up the price of silver a little bit. Because people will charge whatever they can. So the more people who want silver, the higher the price is. So if there's like two outsiders competing over that same, last 100-ounce bar of silver, 1,000-ounce bar of silver, so as to pay a commune member for some job. Well, then, like, the coin shop seller can bid he can say, no, 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 since you guys are competing over this, I'm gonna up the price of the silver. You know what I mean? So then this would up the price of silver. Especially because that would mean more money in the pockets of the coin shop people. And then, that means those guys could have bigger inventory. They could buy more silver, thus depleting the amount of silver that is, mined every year quicker, depleting that amount quicker. So, like I said, people charge whatever they can. So the more people who want silver, the higher the price will be, probably. At least maybe not in COMEX terms, but in terms of what you can buy it for at any of the sellers, whether online or anywhere, especially if they're willing to pay significantly above the normal price to be able to get that silver. That is, the people are trying to buy. But perhaps this would only happen if the commune members were very high in demand, and also if the commune were very largely populated. Otherwise, any increase in the price of silver would be so minuscule it would be unimportant, less than a penny per ounce. But at the very least, getting paid mostly in silver and only a small percentage in dollars would mean that all the people who would hire the commune members and would have to buy silver in order to pay those commune members, those people would start thinking more about silver and why the commune members refuse to be paid entirely or even mostly in cash, but instead only take, 10 to 25% of their pay in cash dollars and the other 75% in silver. The people who have to buy silver to pay them would be like, why do they only take payment in silver? Man, maybe there's really something here. Maybe I should be taking payment only in silver too, And then maybe some outsiders will start only taking payment in silver, or 75 or 50% in silver, And then maybe that'll become a trend in society. And then the demand for silver will massively increase, and then the price really will go up when all the outsiders are trying to, get paid in silver too, So that would massively drive up the price and increase by increasing the scarcity, right? Thus putting pressure on the U.S. government's price suppression of silver to the point where they can't sustain it. And then it becomes the case of like the price has to be allowed to rise, or else, there will be no supply, and then everybody will want it because of it being so incredibly rare, So I really think that very well could happen. And, there's one more thing I was going to say about that, but what was it? Maybe it'll come to me later. But continuing with the script. And regarding this channel, there are only a few major points that I want everyone to understand, because there are really only a few major points that you have to know and deeply believe and put into practice. Number one, sound money is absolutely essential. You should be putting a big chunk of your savings into both gold and silver. You need silver because it may very well outperform gold, especially over the long term, or at least when the government collapses, whether that's in 50 years or 10 years. Like if the government utterly collapses, gold and silver will absolutely skyrocket, but silver will skyrocket way more than gold will. Maybe gold will go up to, 500,000 an ounce, but maybe silver will go up to 100,000 an ounce. So compared to, what you bought it for, the percentage gains will be much bigger if you own silver, right? But you can't own just silver either. Silver's for profit and over a long period of time, and it kind of assumes a collapse. Or it assumes you're going to hold the silver for, 200 to 400 years, you and your descendants, so that eventually when it becomes more rare than gold, then it'll be worth more than gold, and then your silver will be hugely profitable for your descendants, right? So silver is best to pass on to your descendants rather than gold. But gold is also important to hold as well, because if you have to raise cash quickly, you want to have gold, because you can sell your gold. Because if you have to sell your silver, you might lose a lot more money than if you had to sell gold, because silver's volatility means you can lose more on silver if you have to sell it to raise cash, if the price of silver is low at that time compared to what you bought it at. If you have gold, you can avoid some of the pain of having to sell some of your precious metals. You can only sell gold, and then gold is a lot more stable in price. It goes up less, but it also goes down less than silver. So, even if it's gone down, it won't have gone down as much as silver will have. So the gold won't. And so selling gold will mean you'll lose less money. If you have to, surprise emergency, you have to, sell a bunch of your gold to gain cash. Loved one is in the hospital or whatever, whatever emergency, business emergency, whatever. It's better to have some gold so that you don't have to dip into your silver for selling. This is just good in terms of not losing dollars. You know what I mean? And then having to, buy the silver back, and then you lose a bunch more money to the higher premiums again, and you'd had to sell it at a bigger loss than if you'd had gold, etc. So you want to have gold for selling in an emergency, but you also want to have silver for either in case of a massive economic collapse, or an utter collapse of society and the government doesn't even exist anymore because it's utter chaos and it's Mad Max all over, or like The Walking Dead everywhere, an end of the world as we know it scenario, or if you want to save the silver for a few hundred years. That's why you want to have a lot of silver also. I think silver is better than gold, but I wouldn't put more than 90% of your money in silver. Probably you don't want to put more than 70% of your money in silver. You want to have a bunch in gold as well, even if you want to keep far less than 50% in gold. Think of gold as cash, good for spending, and think of silver as a very long-term investment or as a really good investment for in case of a collapse. Even though the historical data over the last 100 years, 40 years or whatever it was, it shows that, silver is worse than gold compared, like if you have, some of your money in gold and some in stocks, or you have some of your money in silver and some in stocks, it's better to have some of your money in gold and some in stocks. But that's the historical data. And like Blind P says, that's not necessarily a predictor of what will happen in the future, right? Like it's a good perhaps indicator, but it kind of assumes society is going to continue to be functional the way it has been. And I don't think there's any guarantees of that, especially since we're utterly destroying the environment. The derivatives market is bigger than ever before. What's his name? Warren Buffett rightly called them economic weapons of mass destruction. No, financial weapons of mass destruction. That's what he called them, right? Like financial weapons of mass destruction, that's what derivatives are, right? So, I don't think there's a whole lot of chance over the next 50 years we're going to have a stable society like we've had over the last 50 years. But, I could be wrong. People are cowards, and so, maybe things just keep rolling on like they are. But anyway, yeah, the data does show that historically gold has done better than silver. I think due to silver's increasing industrial demand, though, I think that will make it, I think it'll be different over the next 100 years or the next 50 years because of silver's increasing industrial demand and the increasing population of the earth and the fact that silver is being destroyed and gold is not. I think this means that 50 to 200 years from now, silver will be way rarer, whereas gold will not be. And then silver will be, eventually a much better investment than gold. Although if you don't have any kids and aren't planning on having any kids and you don't think society will collapse in the next 50 years, then you're not going to have anyone to pass down your money to. Or if you don't want to pass your money down to anyone, or and you also don't think society will collapse, well, then it'd probably be better for you to save in gold. Assuming you have the money to buy gold, because gold is only the better deal, in my opinion, if you buy large pieces of it, such as 1 ounce pieces or maybe half ounce pieces. Otherwise, it can be a better deal to buy silver, especially if you're buying big chunks of silver, right? Because then you're paying a pretty low premium. So if you don't have kids and aren't going to have any, and you have a good amount of money, and you don't think society is going to collapse, and especially if you don't want to pass your precious metals down to anyone, then you should probably be buying gold. But if you want to pass your precious metals down for centuries, or you think there's going to be a collapse in the next 50 years, a massive collapse, I mean massive, like a new Great Depression or far worse, or if you want to just wage maximum warfare, financial warfare on the U.S. government, or if you have a limited amount of money, then in any of those scenarios, you should buy silver. If any of those scenarios apply to you, like you want to wage maximum war against the government, buy silver. You want to pass your precious metals down for centuries, buy silver. Or if you have a limited amount of money, you're poor, then buy silver. But anyway, like I was saying, one of the major points of this channel is to get people to understand precious metals and save and sound money, both to fight the government and to save themselves from the ravages of inflation, and also tertiarily, because precious metals are beautiful. Number two, so they're kind of fun to save in. Like you could buy, 20 ounces a month in, silver rounds from Sunshine Mint, and then you could buy one kookaburra or one Queen's Beast round or whatever each month. Then you're buying, beautiful coins, but you're not wasting tons of money on premiums by buying only those. You're mainly buying rounds that are cheap, but you're also buying, for aesthetic value, for fun, you're also buying these really beautiful coins, which also might appreciate numismatically in value and might also be profitable in the end as well, 10, 20 years later. Second point of this channel is to get men to understand that women can be truly wicked, like MGTOW men talk about, but women are malleable, and will thus be whatever men force them to be. And thus men can force women to be very well behaved by forming their own all-male communes that women will only be allowed to come into if those women marry one of the men of the commune before they come into the commune, and if those women agree to give up all their rights and submit themselves completely to the authority of their husband, such as it was throughout all of human history, And if men of that commune are all highly virtuous, and if men of that commune are all disciplining their women by spanking their wives or their daughters when they misbehave. Right? Like that is what men need to go back to. Form a male commune, only let women into it if the women agree to marry and be utterly submissive to their husbands, and spank those women and the daughters of by those women. Spank those women when they misbehave. You know? As women are not rational. They don't respond to logic. So you have to, spank them when they misbehave. Plus, quite frankly, they like it. They get off on it. So, and like I said before, if you're like turning them on more by spanking them, this actually is, unlike what I realized before, this actually is a way of still controlling them because, a higher sex drive means more weakness. Because then you're dependent on the other person to give you sex. And so then the more men turn their wives on by spanking them, the more men have leverage by withdrawing sex from women when the women are misbehaving. So then, they can keep them under control that way. And number three, the third point of this channel is to get men to understand the incredibly huge importance of IQ and memory. I mean, there's really almost nothing more important than IQ and memory. IQ and memory are absolutely essential to attaining prosperity, to regaining freedom from government tyranny by forming communes independent in every way from the influence of the government, because you need high IQs to build the commune's technological infrastructure and stuff. I want everyone to realize that the IQ requirement for a middle-class job is getting higher and higher, and the new way of fighting is coding. And the only way to fight the government is to do eugenic breeding. And without doing either genetic engineering, which is not possible yet, at least not for the public, although the Chinese government will soon be doing it behind closed doors. But like I was saying, you can't eugenically raise IQs and improve memories and keep health strong and increase beauty and charisma without either doing genetic engineering or doing eugenic breeding programs, such as raising both kids that you have by your wife, as well as paying to raise the daughters of an ugly but smart woman who has kids using the sperm of one or more guys who have very high IQs, very good memories, and great health. And preferably good looks and charisma as well. Whether she actually has sex with those guys to get pregnant or whether they just jack off and give her the sperm and then she uses a turkey baster. It's not like she's freezing the sperm or messing with it in any way, or like you're getting the sperm from a guy who might have a high IQ from a sperm bank but who may have bad health. It's not like she's doing that. She's getting the sperm from a guy who has a really high IQ, really good memory, and really good health. And she knows him personally, or like the commune knows the guy personally. So then they get it from him, and then the women of the commune who are, ugly but smart and are not married to any of the men of the commune, those women, give birth to a bunch of kids, and then those kids marry all the daughters and sons of the commune members as men that the men have with their wives. The men have kids with their wives, and then these other ugly but smart women who are not married to any men, those women live in the commune too, and then those women, use the sperm of guys with really good health, really high IQs, and really good memories, and then those women have a bunch of kids with them, and then those kids are married off to the sons and daughters of the men of the commune, the biological sons and daughters of the men of the commune, right? So then the grandkids of everybody in the commune are much smarter than would otherwise be possible, and so then when you do this, you are massively improving the commune, and there's no negative health effects of this. You see, you're creating a bunch of smart kids, and then if the next generation does it, then their kids, the next generation after the grandkids, the great-grandkids of the original people who started the commune, they have even higher IQs, and then the great-great-grandkids have even higher IQs and better memories and just as good of health. So you can absolutely do this, and this is hugely, hugely, hugely important. If you want to code freedom into existence, which is really one of the only ways of fighting government, you have to raise IQs. If you want to build up the commune's technological infrastructure so it's even just on par with the U.S., much less more advanced, you got to have a bunch of high IQ people in the commune. You do investing online in the commune, so a bunch of people in the commune can make a bunch of money, but just do so on the computer without even having to work, other than, being a trader like Zeitgeist Eater is. You want to be able to make a bunch of money easily like that, and without even having to leave the commune, then you can make money that way, but only, again, if you have high IQs and great memories. So eugenics enables all things, building up the technological infrastructure of the commune, not having to leave the commune and thus being less dependent on the outside world, not having to leave and therefore get arrested by the cops if the cops decide to cordon off surround the commune and wait it out like they were trying to do or were beginning to do with Waco. Every good thing comes from high IQs and good memories. It's not to say that health is not important, but you don't have to make a trade-off. You can have grandkids with much higher IQs and better memories without having them have worse health. You really can. And you don't have to have your wife get pregnant by other men's sperm. You don't. You do not have to do that. You can have other ugly but smart women get pregnant with, really high IQ, really great memory, really good health guys of sperm, and then give kids, give birth to kids which you'll marry off to your kids. This is totally possible, and this is absolutely essential if you want your commune to survive and thrive, and therefore be able to become its own country eventually, and so that you can all be free and prosperous and all that. And number one, saving, like I was saying, these are the main points of my channel, I guess. Really, just number one, save and sound money, both gold and silver, but perhaps platinum, palladium, and rhodium as well. Number two, form a commune, and don't let any of the guys in the commune marry women who are not virgins. Only let highly moral guys in the commune, and spank the commune's women when the women misbehave. And number three, do eugenic breeding so that the commune will get more and more powerful over time, more educated, more prosperous, more technologically advanced, more able to write subversive code to marginalize the government out of existence. Also do eugenic breeding so that your kids will be able to live happy, prosperous lives and will be able to get a spouse and have kids, thus passing on your genes and the good moral and financial lessons of the commune, because your kids and then your grandkids, etc., each generation will be increasingly more likely to be turned into incels if they're not keeping up with the rising IQ requirement to get a middle-class job by doing eugenic breeding. If you're not doing eugenic breeding, you're dooming your kids to being even more likely to be an incel than you. You're dooming your grandkids to being even more likely to be an incel than your kids, and you're dooming your great-grandkids to be even more likely to be an incel than your grandkids. You see, so you have to do eugenic breeding program, even to just make sure your genes continue to be passed on at all. You see? Unless, of course, you're going to do genetic engineering, but then you're getting into the whole thing of like, it's controlled by the government, and they put all kinds of genes into your kids that you don't want them putting in there, like genes for gullibility and low testosterone and all kinds of negative stuff, So you can't use genetic engineering. You have to do a breeding program to stay free. Because they absolutely will enslave us with a breeding program, with genetic engineering. They absolutely will. So we have to be able to raise IQs without doing genetic engineering. This is absolutely essential to understand. Also, like I said, passing on when you pass on your genes, then you can also pass on the good moral and financial lessons of the commune also. And you can only pass down your genes if you can get a woman, and you can only get a woman if you have a high enough IQ to be making decent money. Right? If you don't do eugenic breeding, your genetic line may very well die out because of your descendants having IQs too low to be able to get any job at all, much less have a job good enough to support a wife and a few kids. Eugenic breeding guarantees your genetic line will survive, and therefore that your philosophy of anarcho-capitalism will also survive. Eugenic breeding also makes sure that you don't have to do genetic engineering to raise your descendants' IQs, and that is important, like I said, because genetic engineering will be very enslaving when it is finally made available to the masses. It will make all sons high in agreeableness and high in obedience, low in defiance, low in testosterone, low in creativity, etc. They will breed our sons to be the ultimate slaves if we use genetic engineering instead of a breeding program. Even though those sons will have high IQs and great memories, they will have low testosterone, low creativity, high gullibility, etc. You do not want your genetic line genetically engineered, because all kinds of enslaving genes will be put into your sons against your will and without your knowledge. You have to do eugenic breeding if you want to avoid that very enslaving evil fate. If you want your descendants to be as free as well as powerful and prosperous, if you want your descendants to be free as well as powerful and prosperous and be able to fight tyranny. Sound money, communes, virginity, spanking, eugenic breeding. Those are the main things that this channel is about. And I really hope that all of my subscribers agree with me about all these major points, because if they don't, they are, in big trouble, because these are essential things to understand. And that's just I think it's absolutely undeniable. This has been Redshift. I hope somebody got something out of this. Peace.